Okay, all right. I'll begin. Welcome everyone to our very first panel discussion. My name is Razali. I'm actually representing IDP Singapore. So I'll kick off this event today. Just give me a minute. Okay. Okay, all right. We've actually got a great attendance today with over 200 registrants. I can actually still see people entering the room. So I'll try to slow down a little and let everybody get into the room first. We've got a stellar group of panelists joining us this afternoon, and I will introduce them very shortly. I'm Razali, and before I go into the introductions and start the panel discussion, just a few housekeeping points I'd like to go through. We are recording this session today, all right, and we will be broadcasting it live on our Facebook page. Just give me a minute now. All right. Now, firstly, how I wanted to begin, I think it'd be good if I can give a brief introduction of who IDP is. All right. So IDP is actually a global leader in international education service. All right. We've been operating for over 50 years, creating a huge network of opportunity with over 100 offices in 30 countries. IDP is co-owned and founded by universities, and as such, it is the official representative of over 700 institutions. In 2017, we acquired Hot Courses Group, a leading course search database and student engagement company. The Hot Courses Group is now integrated into our organization under the new division IDP Connect. IDP is also a proud co-owner of IELTS, the world's most popular English language test and operator of 9 English language teaching campuses in Southeast Asia. Now, part of our work involves fostering strong collaborations with government organizations to continuously drive interest in overseas education. Now with that, we're proud to present our expert panelists from 4 of our study destinations to help provide more clarity to students and parents who are looking to study abroad. Firstly, we've got Mr. Ben Burrows, Regional Manager, East Asia for Education New Zealand, who will be helping us with our New Zealand queries. Representing Australia, we've got Ms. Sharifa Karunisa, Education Manager for Australia Trade and Investment Commissions, or Austrade. We have Ms. Helen Young, Senior Marketing Manager, Study UK British Council. And last but not least, we've got Ms. Caroline Moran, the Trade Commissioner of High Commissions of Canada. Welcome again to all our esteemed panelists, and we look forward to hear a very fruitful discussion later. Now, before we kick off, we'd like to welcome our country manager, Mr. Raymond Yu, to share some updates and interesting findings from a student survey IDP Connect has conducted to set the scene for the panel discussion. So let me leave it to you, Raymond.
Thank you, Razali, and once again, thank you to the esteemed panelists from around the globe sitting in this first of its kind panel discussion, and welcome everyone to a panel discussion that's organized by IDP Singapore in conjunction with questions and answers that you guys want to have with regards to COVID-19. So just a bit of updates on IDP Singapore. If you heard from Razali in what we do. So IDP Singapore updates in terms of Connect survey. We have done a survey on 72 nationalities across about 6,000, 7,000 students to find out what they would like to study in terms of how they would like to study online, overseas. Are they still interested in studying, going overseas to study, and what are the key concerns for the studies? So maybe we can move to the next slide. Yeah. So before we talk about the research that we did, I just want to highlight some of the things that IDP Singapore has done. We are constantly developing and trying to engage our students and universities together to provide a platform where students, parents are able to find out what is happening in this situation and how they are going to apply for universities and what they're going to do to study, to get to study overseas. So we have launched a virtual counseling website that students can go in. It is very similar to a physical counseling session, except that it's done virtually. So you just basically go into the website, sign in virtual counseling. We have also started a IDP study abroad application where you are able to get information on your mobile phone about various universities and their application status. We have also launched virtual fairs. Now, virtual is going to be a mainstay, at least until the borders start to open. And we are trying to develop this platform for our students and parents and universities alike to engage each other to find out more about what they can do during this situation. Virtual seminars that we have on a regular basis, actually basically on a weekly basis with universities, where students and parents can meet our university representatives on a one-to-one basis. And of course, what we have here, a panel discussion on getting subject experts to come in, speak about situations, and also provide guidance and answers to dying questions that you guys have. Right, so moving on to the research. Rosalie? Yes, okay. So as I said, the research is done on 6,900 students over 72 nationalities. And what we see is, and all these students are basically, 72% of them are offer holders. There's 11% that are pending offers, 3% are current international students applying for further studies, and a study in home country is 1%, study on hold 12%, and those that have withdrawn is 1%. Some of the key findings that we have on the next slide. Would be, so from here you can see that at 69% of students still want to go overseas and study, and they're still looking to plan ahead to go overseas to take their overseas education. 26% are still in limbo in terms of probably they want to understand a bit more of what it entails going overseas to study, safety issues, and also in terms of the online approach for studying. So you can see data there are about 38% of students also prefer to study face-to-face, 48% of that, 31% has accepted online transition study, 10% is studying online, and there's a few that's undecided and withdrawn from the applications. So the key findings basically on the next slide are that the majority of international students and applicants still remain determined to study overseas, even though there are some travel restrictions. Of course, waiting for the travel restrictions to be lifted before they can go about the studies. I thought a lot of them do state that because of the overseas experience that they get studying overseas, they still want to continue going overseas to study. Although there's overwhelming favor of studying face-to-face, but the online delivery is also a viable option right now before the opening of the borders, before they move on to a face-to-face study. So these are some of the key findings that IDP has done for the research. And I think without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Cheryl to start with the panel discussion.
Hi. Okay, so warm welcome to our panelists again. We're just so glad to have you all join us today from your corner of the world. Hope everyone's safe wherever you are. And to our students, parents, and partners listening in, thank you all for taking the time as well. I think to begin, panelists, it'd be great if you could kick off by just having everyone talk about what the current situation is in your destination country. So like everybody has a broad understanding and overview. Let's just kick off with Helen from Study UK. Helen, maybe you could share with us about the current situation in the UK with our international students. And thank you for joining us on UK time, by the way.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay? There we go. I'm speaking to you all today from a sunny London, a little bit chilly, but in terms of how the situation here is in the UK at the moment, we are just easing the lockdown, responding to the first wave of the pandemic here, and things are feeling more positive. But it is an evolving situation, as it is globally. And so we're going on a week by week basis at the moment. And the effects are different in different regions and in different cities. What I would say is we're learning to socialize in physically distant ways. The biggest social change is the digital acceleration, I think, that the lockdown has fueled in work, in education, and in leisure as well. And I'm sure this will have a long-term impact, but it's hard to tell what that will be just at this time. Despite the disruption caused by COVID, I'm pleased to say that in terms of education, the UK is overwhelmingly in favour of international students and is absolutely encouraging people to apply for this academic year, starting from this autumn. The UK higher education sector has really gone above and beyond to make sure that international students and domestic students' mental and physical health and welfare is really prioritised. And our amazing National Health Service in the UK really has been doing a great job and taking care of people, you know, from around the world actually during the pandemic, and will continue to do so. Most universities are preparing now for new students in the autumn, with some adjustments to teaching and learning, of course, for semester one, if these are necessary. A small number of universities are choosing to teach online for the autumn term, but I think what we'll find is that many will use a blend of both face-to-face learning and online technology and tools to ensure that students have the real student experience and a great education. I suppose what I would say is that whatever the student experience will be, international students are guaranteed to learn from the same world-class institutions, receive the same quality learning experience, and have the same great employment prospects afterwards as well. So I would encourage you all to apply this year.
That's really encouraging, Helen. Thank you so much. Students, that paints a very good picture. Go ahead and apply for autumn. Maybe Sharifa, you could comment on the situation in Australia.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think it's very similar to what we are seeing in New Zealand as well. So just to put things into perspective in terms of what's happening in Australia, the Australian government is taking this pandemic very seriously, and it's actually one of the first few countries to implement travel restrictions, lockdowns, and roll out national testing. So if you look at the rate of cases for developed countries, Australia has slightly above 7,000 cases, which is actually quite low when compared to all the other developed countries, and out of which 90% of them has fully recovered. So similar to Singapore, Australia has also implemented a 3-step plan to ease restrictions. And you might have read in the news that just this weekend, Western Australia has started to reopen businesses and allow people to travel regionally. However, international travels are still closed at the moment. But for the July intake, the Australian universities have all moved into online delivery models. So, as an international student, you can still enroll into the universities. You will still have the same post-study work rights for, as an international student studying onshore. So we highly encourage you to, apply for any of the Australian universities. And for some of you who may be interested in, in overseas studies, but you're not quite sure what program that you want to take, you might consider the Austrade collaboration with FutureLearn. So we actually have a collaboration where we allow students to take taster modules. So for example, if you're interested in medical programs or psychology programs, you can take a course out of Murdoch University's or Monash University's program. So just to give you a taste of what the university program is like. And if you apply before 30th of June, it's actually free for you guys.
Wow, that's quite unique. Thank you so much, Sharifa. Ben, would you like to comment on the situation in New Zealand?
Sure, kia ora, Cheryl, and to everyone else online. Thank you very much. I know it's a rainy day here in Singapore, so thank you very much for giving up your time this afternoon. Look, I think New Zealand, just to give you sort of try and give you a really brief summary, or New Zealand, or I guess our team of 5 million, as Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has termed it. I think, look, we're very proud of the fact that we've managed to radically slow the spread of COVID-19. And as of today, in fact, we've now had over 2 weeks of no new cases and just over 1,100 confirmed COVID-19 cases in total. And I think what happened, the government took a go hard, go early approach in late March. At that stage, we had just 200 cases when we went into national lockdown. Like, I won't go into the full details, but essentially since then, the government's eased restrictions in a planned or a phased manner. So, and we're now at alert level 2, and we have an announcement due on Monday on potentially moving to level 1, which I guess is as close to normal as possible at the moment. But what I can say, most businesses and all education facilities are now open at level 2. Of course, with the usual safety guidelines and social distancing measures in place. We've got social gatherings now up to 100 people. So obviously that means students in New Zealand can attend classes and institutions, can go to cafes, bars, restaurants, and we're also now have full travel around the country. I guess one important point is that only New Zealand citizens and residents can enter the country for now, unless there are extreme circumstances. And all New Zealanders returning from overseas must go into 2 weeks of managed isolation. Obviously, the border closures have had an impact and will continue to have an impact on our economy, given we're, as I mentioned, a nation of just 5 million people, and the fact that tourism and international education are 2 large industries for us. But I think speaking, longer term, we're really proud of how the pandemic's been managed in New Zealand. And I think, even the World Health Organization has also publicly recognized New Zealand as being world leading in our response to COVID-19. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of where we're at the moment. And, happy to talk in more detail or to answer questions later on support we're giving to our international students and, the various advice we can give around still applying for courses. So, but yeah, hopefully that gives you a good sense of where we are today.
That's really brilliant, Ben. Seriously, props to New Zealand on containing the spread of COVID-19. I've been reading up as well, and I can't believe you guys have contained it so well. Congrats. Caroline,
Sure.
Would you like to comment on the situation in Canada? Caroline?
Oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Something popped up on my screen. My apologies.
No problem.
So we've definitely in Canada, we've flattened the curve. However, all the restrictions and a number of preventive measures are still in place, and we're not done with our fight against COVID-19. So as of yesterday, we had about over 93,000 cases of COVID-19 in Canada. However, about a third of them are still active cases. I would say that some parts of the country are more affected than others. As you may know, Canada is a very, very big country. And more than half of the cases of Canada are actually located in the province of Quebec, and Montreal is the city that has been the most impacted. Similarly to a lot of other countries, it's really the elderly in Canada who have been really affected by COVID. But Canada did react very early on and close the border, for example, with our main border with the USA in March, and it's closed until at least June 21st. It could also be renewed, the closure for another month, and so on. So we are in a better situation than we were, say, a number of weeks ago, but the fight is definitely not over. However, some parts of the countries have started to reopen. Some schools are slowly reopening, some businesses and commercial shops as well. However, social distancing is definitely a must and is very much the norm all across Canada at the moment. In terms of how we are dealing, how this is all affecting education, one thing we need to understand about Canada is that education is a provincial responsibility. So that means that all 10 provinces in Canada and the 3 territories of Canada all have a different Ministry of Education, therefore different sets of rules and guidelines that are in place. But I would say that most universities have moved on to online learning. And at the moment, there's still not a lot of students on campus. However, there's a few exceptions for some students that really need to be getting this sort of hands-on experience or access to labs and so on. There's a few exceptions that are done in a very controlled environment.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for the detail on that. That's great, everybody, and that paints quite a positive picture for now. I think the next question that I would like to pose to everybody is that how then are the different governments and the higher education institutions adapting to the situation in your country? We've seen so many schools moving onto online delivery, as you said. What are the general opinions on online delivery of programs for now, and how are the students taking to it? Maybe Helen, you'd like to kick us off again?
So to answer your first question about how the government and institutions are adapting, they really are working together, is the first thing I'd say, to ensure that any existing rules and processes are as flexible as they possibly can be, given the current unprecedented circumstances, to ensure that international students who are planning to study with us in the autumn really can do so. The health and safety of the students and also of the staff and the surrounding community is the #1 priority at the moment. So the way that the government and the institutions are making sure they're ready is, I suppose, firstly, making appropriate changes to the university layout and infrastructure, even because, a lecture hall, for example, that may have sat 570 students may just fit 60 for one session. And they'll also make sure that the timing of the teaching day is used in the best way possible, so that the hours are used well, but also so that there aren't too many people in one place at one time. They're also reviewing, teaching and learning to make sure that it's, it's got the required flexibility, and regularly reviewing what it is in terms of welfare and support that students and staff need. They're also looking at hygiene, of course, and cleaning protocols in the university spaces. And another thing too is making sure that international students and also the domestic students have the proper welcome that they really deserve in the autumn term, even if in the first instance for Freshers Week, for example, the new students, that this needs to be virtual online session. So the student unions and universities are working together at the moment to really put some good sessions in place so everyone feels they have the same social opportunities. And in terms of keeping people on campus safe, something that some of you may have seen in the news coming out of the UK recently is a term called bubbles, so social bubbles. And just to explain that a little bit, it's still in the planning phase. But actually it means that, for example, if you're an engineering student, so that you're able to carry on with your studies, you may find that in the first instance, you might be living alongside engineering students, which means that actually that bubble, that group of students, can be with each other and not isolated. So they'll go about their lives kind of in a similar way. That's the thinking at the moment from the UK. In terms of the, you mentioned online delivery, I think. What I would say is that the UK higher education system demands high quality teaching, and that's how it maintains its, internationally renowned reputation. So any mitigations such as online delivery really must adhere to these standards. So if there are any concerns, I hope that people would remember that really the universities are putting their all to making sure that standards are consistent with how they've always been. And as I said, the universities are looking to welcome the students in autumn. There will be adjustments, and we're looking at maybe 3 scenarios at the moment, depending on how this develops. So the first one is normal opening of campuses in September and October if the curve is flattened. Secondly, if social distancing restrictions are still required, then that might mean that lectures are online, but actually smaller group tuition can proceed, which is good news. And then the third scenario would be, if the situation worsens, that face-to-face teaching won't be possible in the first term, and that teaching will be online, but then moved onto campus as soon as is possible. So it's being renewed constantly.
Got it. Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much. I've read about that one as well. It's so interesting, the bubbles that were happening. Sharifa, perhaps you'd like to comment on online delivery in Australia?
So for Australia, Australian universities have been, delivering online programs for so many years. So when COVID-19 happened, it's pretty easy for the Australian university to transit into online delivery for the international students. So, even if, you can't study in Australia right now, you are in Singapore for the July intake, you are still able to access the study resources, you have access to your academics via virtual communication platforms. So far, the feedback that we receive from international students has been very positive. For some of them, they even mentioned that they've had more communication with their teammates as well as academics than when they were in Australia. So I think being virtual allows people to kind of break down the barriers and have the confidence to talk more to the academics. But on this stage, on the safety measures, the first source of information that you should look at is our Study in Australia website. It gives you the latest updates on Australia's COVID-19 policies, as well as the various types of support and financial assistance rendered to students. So Australia actually manages this website, and we also include information from states and territories, the Department of Health, Department of Home Affairs. So for those of you who want information on visa regulations, for example, so we just want to make sure that international students are well taken care of and ensuring that Australia remains one of the safest destinations for international students.
Thanks, Sharifa. Really appreciate that. Ben, would you like to comment on the online delivery of programs in New Zealand and how it's been taken, how they're taking to it at the moment?
Yeah, sure. I think, look, starting, I guess, on the New Zealand government side, I mean, we have a mixture of agencies, obviously Education New Zealand, but the Ministry of Education, Immigration New Zealand, etc. I think what I would say is we're able to move quite quickly to support students and education providers, through the COVID-19 crisis. And then I think specifically looking at our sector, and as Sharifa mentioned as well, I mean, all of our institutions were already well set up to make that transition to distance learning when we went into lockdown in late March. And I guess our Ministry of Education also stepped in with a range of other partners, essentially to support or, to make sure that all schools and students were properly set up distance learning, and to ensure every learner had, at least one connection to online learning. So that was I guess at a domestic level. But look, as I mentioned, all our schools and early learning centres, etc., have been open for face-to-face lessons since the 18th of May. Our universities and other tertiary institutions have also all been open for face-to-face learning since the 14th of May. So I guess we're in a slightly different situation where we've moved, into face-to-face or on-campus learning. Obviously, that's not applicable for our international students who are wanting to still come, given the fact that our borders are are still closed. And I guess it was interesting seeing your survey results or research results through IDP. It's actually very similar, I guess, to the conversations we've been having with our with our universities in particular. I think most are viewing, even though a lot of them do deliver full online learning, you can obviously complete degrees and etc. completely online, but a lot are still viewing the online learning, I guess, as an interim solution for new students. So the new students are able to engage with the universities online, begin their learning, and they're also obviously not required to have a student visa to do the online learning, but then can obviously can then come when they're able to, and when we are more than happy to welcome them back to New Zealand. I guess it's fair to say that the challenge for New Zealand at the moment is to strike that balance between online learning for international students and the face-to-face, because a big, always our selling point and our, I guess, point of difference is the really unique learning environment that we have on offer in New Zealand for our international students. It's quite a different learning environment to a lot of other countries, and it's perhaps what sets us apart. And it's obviously something that is very hard to replicate online. So I think, viewed as an interim solution while still receiving really positive feedback about the online experience. But at the same time, we're still very, very keen to welcome the students back to New Zealand, and they can enjoy our learning environment in person.
That's great, Ben. Thank you so much. It's good that the engagement has been, just so positive and done so quickly. Everyone's reaction time has been really good so far. Caroline, would you like to, I know you've already touched on it briefly. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add on to how students have reacted to online delivery?
Yes, sure. So like I said, most of our universities are now, have moved on to online learning, and some plan to reopen with some physical space and some in-person activity only when it's going to be safe to do so. However, there's a number of universities that have already said that their fall semester will most likely be delivered mostly online. Some of these universities that have come out with this are, for example, the University of British Columbia, Alberta, Winnipeg, Dalhousie, McGill. Then again, if the situation drastically changed in Canada and if we were in control of COVID, perhaps they would, I guess, revise their plan. But for now, they are telling the students that they will likely in August be continuing the online learning. Some other universities are saying, like, obviously online learning will still be present, but they are planning for a mix of physical classes as well as online. One thing that I will say, I guess that makes me very proud of the Canadian universities, is that there's been a big focus on mental health as well for the students. It's been a very difficult situation for a lot of people, and they really have there's a number of resources that are available for them, and there's been a lot of different initiatives created and making sure that no one feels isolated during this time and so on. So it's, as much as we would like things to go back to normal and bring all the students back on campus and carry on with a more normal education, or at least how we've been doing it for the longest time, I think that the online education is probably there to stay, at least in the next few months. But they're doing everything they can to keep everybody connected and make sure everybody is safe and healthy and well.
Thank you so much, Caroline. And on that point, I was going to go to that brings me to my next question actually for the panel, and that is how's the government and the institutions actually supporting international students during this period? Are there any steps or precautions in place to ensure the safety of international students? Is there any kind of financial support provided to existing international students? So Caroline, thank you for bringing up the resources and the care that the university is given to students in the area of mental health. Do you just want to elaborate a little bit more in case there's any other types of steps or precautions that have been taken in the way of financial support or other precautions?
Sure. So a number of universities have given bursaries, especially to those who are that were experiencing sort of unexpected and unmanageable costs related to COVID-19 pandemic. A number of universities also recently announced that they're looking to increase this financial aid. However, this is done really sort of on a case-by-case basis, and every university has a slightly different policy. One thing, though, that is quite important to mention is that international students in Canada, most of them have access to the public healthcare system. So a number of provinces actually provide healthcare coverage to international students. These provinces include Alberta, British Columbia, Manitoba, Newfoundland, Northwest Territories, and Saskatchewan. And in other provinces which don't necessarily provide this coverage, they have a number of mandatory sort of insurance plan that the students have to take. So basically, international students in Canada, in most circumstances, would have access to a very good public healthcare system in the event that they fell ill in Canada. We absolutely don't wish that upon anybody, but it's very important to make sure that there is a health coverage in place for the students. One other change that has happened during the last few months for international students in Canada is typically you can only work during a semester up to 20 hours a week. However, now some of the rules have been sort of a bit more relaxed around this. And if students are working in a essential service, for example, healthcare, critical infrastructure, supply of food, or other critical good, they can actually work more than 20 hours a week, even when it's during their study term. So I think we've seen a number of people step up to the task and are able to sort of pitch in, work a little bit more, and still keep up with the online education.
That's great, Caroline. And that's a fantastic point as well about the health cover. And this is great for students to note, even when international borders do let up, you are covered by mandatory health insurance. So that's a great point. And with regards to relaxing of the visa requirements for international students to work, I think that's fantastic. I think, Sharifa, would you like to comment on that as well? I think something like that is similarly happening in Australia as well, right? With the financial support?
Yes, so the Australian government has developed strong mechanisms for international students. So for example, the government has set aside an additional $200 million to fund organizations that can help impacted communities and students. So in addition to that, many universities and education providers are offering a range of support such as deferred studies or payments, fee deferrals, food and accommodation support, and then of course mental health and other medical support. In total, that's about $145 million. Students are also covered by the overseas student health cover, so they also have access to Australia's world-class health facilities. And if let's say you are international students who have been working in Australia for longer than 12 months, you can actually use your superannuation if you face financial hardship. And if you work in, for example, a disability or aged care organization, or you're employed by a healthcare organization, the Australian government has also announced special working arrangements for you.
Super. Thank you so much, Sharifa. Helen, would you like to comment on how there have been steps of precautions taken to ensure the safety?
Yeah, of course. So every UK university has the pastoral support in place already for its students. But as well as what the university is doing, as I mentioned earlier, the student unions, the students themselves are really stepping up as well, just like Caroline said in Canada. So it's great to see that community between the students. Some of the ways in which the universities themselves are helping the students, just to give you an idea, we've seen examples of food banks for those students who are still on campus in the UK. We've even had grocery deliveries to the door of students on campus, or some universities are providing up to 3 free meals a day for those who are still with us here. Some other universities are providing fact-checked news updates to their students. The students really know what is actually going on rather than trying to scramble the information from different places. Another thing as well is dedicated helplines set up at a lot of universities for 7 days a week for students who do have any issues. And some universities have been sending students' belongings back home if that's what they need, free of charge as well, just to help out where finances may be tight. And speaking of finances, each university has a student hardship fund, but actually at this time they've been extending this, and they have been given permission by the UK government to use this more than normal. So this is for students who've been adversely affected by the virus, either directly or indirectly. And I think it's just for this month and next, there's over £20 million available there, and this for universities across the UK, and this will be used for mental and physical health support, but also for things like IT and technology needs, so that students can be, in touch with the community around them if they didn't have that proper equipment before. And then in terms of what the government is doing to support students with their health needs, the UK government has provided guidance on COVID-19 cleaning in healthcare settings. So this covers environments such as student accommodation and other spaces within the community as well. And of course, universities will be putting measures in place to make sure that they're abiding by these. The Department for Education has also put in place guidance on self-isolation and social distancing for students living in university or college halls of residence. So that's all very much in place, and the guidance is very, very clear. And a note on that as well for self-isolation. From Monday, so the 8th of June, any international students coming into the UK, or also international staff for that matter, coming into the UK will be subject to self-isolation rules, so that they and their community are remaining safe and well. And what this will mean is that international students must travel directly to the place where they're staying in the UK and remain there for 14 days, only leaving for really very essential reasons. And there isn't an end date to this at the moment, but it is going to be reviewed every 3 weeks to make sure that it's changing with the times. Students really don't need to worry though. The government's already working with the universities to make sure that the right requirements are in place, and certain things are being put in place. For example, making sure students have an ensuite bathroom so that they're not having to share bathroom facilities with others at this time. So it's not something to worry about. The universities are making sure that students really are receiving the welcome that they deserve when they get here. It's just a matter to keep them and others safe just for those first 2 weeks. And then a last point from me, just to reiterate that the National Health Service, the treatment of COVID and COVID-related symptoms is free of charge for everybody in the UK, including all international students. So that will be there if anybody needs it, and let's hope they don't. But and also, once you are an international student here and you've paid your immigration health surcharge, then you'll be entitled to free NHS treatment for all other conditions as well. So that support is in place. Anything else from me? I suppose I've mentioned the Student Hardship Fund. The last thing I would say is there are the usual bursaries and scholarships on offer as well. So as well as that separate pot, which is for, for particularly difficult circumstances, I would say, first of all, check the Study UK website. We have a special scholarship page, and that will lay out all of the ones which the government is offering for you. And then very importantly, go to the institution's website that you're interested in studying at, because each of them has a scholarship website, and all you need to do is type in where you're from and the discipline you're going to read. So, if you're going to be a chemistry student, for example, and at what level of, what level of education, are you an undergrad student, postgrad student? And it will list for you quite clearly which pools of money you might be eligible for.
That's a great tip, Helen. Thank you so much. Ben, would you like to comment on the, the financial support to prospective, or rather, or your existing international students?
Sure. Yeah, I think, look, as a country, we've, I guess, built our reputation on being, warm and welcoming for our international students. And when we talk about that a lot, but for me personally, it's been quite incredible to see it actually in action, during COVID-19. And look, we're obviously aware that some international students were or still are experiencing unusual hardship because of changes to their personal circumstances. So look, a few things there, and very similar points to that have already been made. We also have a international student hardship fund, again for those experiencing a change to personal circumstances due to COVID-19. And what that basically means is their education providers or even community organisations can apply for grants, which then allow the international students with direct financial relief or other support. And again, that's, basic as things like simple food parcels or more substantial support towards living costs. What else are we doing? So students in New Zealand with visas expiring, between, I guess, now and, well, from April to July, we'll have those automatically extended to late September at no additional cost. And similar, I think, as Carolyn mentioned as well, in terms of the relaxed visa conditions to allow our international students to work in essential services, so whether they're in supermarkets or within the healthcare sector. So they're also able to work more than 20 hours per week in certain circumstances. I think probably the one really valuable, I guess, opportunity or offer that's been put forward at a government level is our wage subsidy, or COVID-19 wage subsidy. So that's basically available to support employers and their employees affected by COVID-19. So we have a large number of international students in New Zealand whose visa allows them obviously to work in New Zealand, and it's no surprise that a lot of their employment has been affected by COVID-19, but they are eligible to apply for the wage subsidy as well. So as of, I think, yesterday or earlier this week, that the criteria for the wage subsidy has just been changed. So an extra 40,000 New Zealand businesses have become eligible. And that scheme's already paid out, I think, close to 11 or 12 billion New Zealand dollars, covering, over 1.5 million jobs, including a huge number of jobs for our international students. So that's been the really positive feedback that we've seen come through from our international student associations across the country. And again, very similar to what Helen and Carolyn have mentioned as well. All of our international students are also eligible for free public healthcare if they think they are at risk to COVID-19. Obviously, that's become a little bit redundant in the last couple of weeks with no new cases, but it's still certainly available. So we feel very proud or confident in the support, and both financially and mentally, that we've provided for our students, and hopefully it'll have a long-term impact, and obviously people will remember the positive response that's taken place during the pandemic.
That's amazing. Thank you, everybody, for your responses to that. I think it's so encouraging to know that such active collaboration, not just with governments, but with the universities, and people like student associations are stepping up, the accommodation providers are stepping up, the health systems are stepping up, and not just to keep it safe, but to keep onshore students you know, engaged, keeping them, you know, well in the area of mental health, keeping it fun for them, and still remaining, you know, keeping up that reputation for being hospitable to international students. I think it's fantastic. I think with that, I'll go on to, I would just want to ask everybody then, like, what kind of advice then would you give to students who are looking at studying abroad in the upcoming semester or beyond with our, you know, our prospective students? Because, you know, I guess it's a bit gray at the moment. What kind of advice would you want to give them? Helen, maybe you want to carry on? Yeah.
Yeah, of course, no worries. So although admissions processes and modes of teaching might look slightly different this year, or at least in the first semester, the UK's universities are definitely continuing to recruit for international students, and are really encouraging students to apply, even if students are unable to travel to the UK to meet usual timelines for the first semester. That encouragement really is there. I think what I would say is that it's for any of us here, it's not possible to predict what will happen this time next year, or even, you know, this in a few months' time. So now really is a good time to seize the opportunity of studying overseas. But I would say that students need to make the best decision for themselves with the information that's available. What I would say as well is I probably have two main pieces of advice for everybody here who's interested in studying in the UK. The very first one is, if you know which institution that you're interested in studying at, please do get in touch with the admissions team there and keep in touch with them, because everything I've said here applies across the board for the UK, but there's going to be nuances to how each institution is dealing with it. And if you keep in touch with them, they will be able to tell you how they are making you know, arrangements for international students, how they're making arrangements for the autumn term, and what it's really going to look like, and you'll have much better idea and be able to think, actually, what is it that I want to do? That's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is actually to make sure that you have your eyes peeled and keep following the Study UK announcements that are going out. So the way you can do that is look at the Study UK website, and I'm sure we can share it afterwards. But it's just study-uk.britishcouncil.org. But we can share that. And on there, we have a special COVID page, and that's got all of the information that you need and all the links you need. So just anything you need there, you can take a look at. There's links there as well to the UCAS website, for example. And I know we've had some questions coming through in the Q&A box about, you know, what's happening for those of us who can't take our exams as we'd hoped. All those sorts of questions are answered on there. And actually, for any of these sorts of scenarios, I would say, keep in touch with the admissions team. If you do have concerns about your exams, for example, make sure that you've contacted your awarding body, see what their plans are for this qualification, and then make sure you're relaying that to the admissions team. Because actually, as I said earlier, the universities are going above and beyond to be as flexible as possible. They want you to study in the UK, so they're going to go out of their way to make that as easy as possible for you. They don't want to stand in your way. Yeah, they're probably my main tips for everybody.
That's a good one as well. Thank you. Thanks, Helen. Sharifa, would you like to offer any advice to possible applicants and prospective students who want to study abroad?
So I guess for me, more importantly is to understand what kind of career you're looking for. So I think before you even think of which destination you want to go to or which university you're looking at, what kind of career are you looking at? Are you doing more business? Are you interested in health and medical? And then that should actually guide you to which institution you should apply to. And I think now is a great time to start your research, because I think the nature of the jobs have changed. There's a lot of talks around startups, around technology. There's a lot of focus on the healthcare sector as well. So, perhaps 1 year ago you might want to do business, but now your choice might change. At this stage, there's no official announcement yet for Australia to reopen our borders. So, you can't even apply for the visa at this stage. But you can always start your first semester in the home country, so in this case, Singapore. But once the border reopens, I think I would highly encourage students to study overseas. So be it Australia, be it the UK or Canada, or even the US. Reason being, the first thing, you have a competitive advantage. Studying overseas gives you access to an international network of students and employers. And for highly specialized programs like nutrition, veterinary sciences, there are limited options in Singapore. So, you have to study overseas for those programs. But for some of you who might want to explore local education, but not in the public institution, there are also Australian degree programs being delivered in Singapore. So you have your James Cook University, your Curtin University, RMIT, Great Wave, Murdoch. They are all fully delivered in Singapore. So that's another option that you can look at.
That's a good tip. Thank you, Sharifa. Yes, so offshore institutions and getting a better idea of the career that you want before study destination. Ben, would you like to comment on it or to offer anything?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think a lot of the key points have already certainly been covered, so I won't talk too long on this point. But similar in New Zealand, look, we're still communicating, promoting our education offering, obviously with certain sensitivities in mind, given the local or current landscape. We've been doing a number of webinars with our New Zealand universities across the region, and they're still very much encouraging students to apply. And look, very similar to what Helen said, is I would encourage any students who are interested in a New Zealand education to look at our specific New Zealand universities and speak directly to their admissions teams. So if you haven't visited the website already, just put Study in New Zealand into Google and it'll pop up. I've got a fantastic tool there, My Study New Zealand, to put your interests in, what you want to study, where you want to study in New Zealand, and it'll provide you with a whole host of options. Look, again, as Sharifa mentioned as well, there's still a lot of uncertainty on when borders are going to reopen. Look, we will welcome students back to New Zealand when the time is right. Appreciate that this is often quite a long decision-making process for when you're looking at study abroad options. So I'd encourage you, to take your time, visit our Study New Zealand website, visit our Immigration New Zealand website. There's a whole host of information on there around visa requirements, obviously some changes in visa requirements. Immigration New Zealand is is still receiving offshore visa applications. They're not processing them currently because our offshore sites remain closed during COVID. So you're still able to submit visa applications. There's advice on the immigration website saying you may wish to defer your application to a later time, but that's completely up to you and completely up to the guidance that you receive from the university that you're talking to. So yeah, hopefully it gives you a bit of a sense. We're still very much speaking and open with prospective students and families. So all of our universities and all institutions are very happy to have a conversation with you.
Super, that's great. Thanks, Ben. Caroline, would you like to offer any advice? Yes,
thank you. So at this time, international students who held a valid study permit granted before or on March 18 will be able to travel to Canada. Like many other countries, there's a mandatory 14-day quarantine for anybody arriving in the country at this time. If the students didn't have a study permit issued before or on March 18, at the moment, they're not allowed to travel to Canada. However, like many other places, they can begin their online classes right here in Singapore. And we've also allowed students to complete up to 50% of their program via distance learning if they can't travel to Canada sooner. In addition, quite a popular program in Canada is the post-graduation work permit, and that is usually tied with the number of years you spend studying in Canada, and you can stay up to 3 years in Canada post-graduation. We've already said that this time up to the end of this year, 2020, if you're pursuing a Canadian online course from Singapore or another country, will count towards your time in Canada if you wish to apply for the post-graduation work permit afterwards. In terms of advice, if you are starting to do your research about Canada, definitely visit the educanada.ca website. You can find a lot of information about studying in Canada. There's a tool on there where you can input, say you want to study biology at the undergrad level, say you're interested in a certain province. Well, it will pull out all the different programs that are available to you, and it's very easy to compare each program. So this is definitely your #1 tool, educanada.ca. There's also a COVID-19 page on educanada.ca that will provide a lot of specific information, and it's being updated for the international students. So definitely keep an eye on this. You can also follow us on social media. The High Commission of Canada, our page is called Canada in Singapore. Right now, this a little bit of a COVID-19 feel on our Facebook page. We're posting about the different regulation, the different changes, what's happening in Canada and so on. And as things reopen, all the information is posted there. So you can find out, a lot of information. And I would say as well, definitely contact the universities. I mean, if you are looking at a specific program, a specific universities, please do get in touch with them. They are really the best people to answer your questions, because things will differ from one university to another. They are very responsive. I know that there's been a lot of inquiries, but they do reply to prospective students. So do get in touch.
That's amazing. That's really brilliant updates, Caroline. That's all great advice, everybody. I hope everybody here caught the links to those amazing resources, the one-stop resource for all high-level updates per country. If not, we'll post those here later, or you can get all of it through the IDP team of counselors. And I think just to summarize, like the excellent advice, keep in touch with your institution and your IDP counselor for the latest admissions updates, because you need more specific advice for each individual university and program. And keep applying, because we don't know how the situation might pan out, and most programs and universities allow deferrals quite easily. And in the interim, distance learning can be done quite easily. And all that online enrollments do count for the duration of the post-study work criteria, as Caroline has mentioned. That's a fantastic update, Caroline. Thank you so much for that. If anybody wants to add anything in regard to that now, please feel free to pop in and say something. If not, we can end our discussion with that. We'll move on to the last question, which is that we've seen a number of very interesting social movements, like the hashtag In This Together and hashtag We Are Together. Would you like to share a little bit more about these movements and any impacts of these plans? Helen, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So from the UK sector, you may have seen the We Are Together hashtag. And this came about because lots of international students are still with us here in the UK. And although lots of them chose to remain here because, think about those people who are still doing their research at university campuses, for example, it was necessary for them to stay. It can be a lonely time when not all of your friends are around and you're staying in accommodation on your own, maybe. So this was a way to showcase some of the stories of how international students are supporting one another, and also how UK universities are supporting them too. So if anybody is interested in taking a look, you can just go on social media and look at the We Are Together hashtag. And also if you look at Study UK British on Twitter or on Instagram, you can see all of these stories. It's really a whole host of things, and I'll kind of allow you to explore it yourselves. But you'll see things from, students cooking with each other, doing dance routines in their spare time, volunteering they've done to support one another, and some of the things I mentioned earlier around the food banks, etc. But it's a real nice corner of the internet for some morale boosting. Also, I would say if you really do, I think it's another good reason to follow it is because it just gives you an idea of what it is like studying in the UK actually, and also for those students who are in the UK already, remember they've been doing the online learning. So this isn't something new for the new students coming in the autumn. They've been doing it, and so maybe go to see how they're getting on with it.
Super. Yes, that's good. The value of studying overseas and online community, right? Sharifa,
yeah.
Do you want to comment on that? I think you've got something similar, yeah?
Yeah, we have something similar. It's called In This Together. We didn't copy it from the UK. But for us, the main reason why we started this In This Together hashtag is because there's a lot of anxiety, amongst not just domestic students in Australia, but also international students when Australia closed the borders. There's a lot of international students that are, that were in Australia, they couldn't return to their home countries. So, there are different initiatives from the government departments as well as universities and the communities actually rally together to make sure that no one is left behind. So there are things like Brisbane Student Hub, for example. So they run like live online shows, games, yoga, music. And then you have the National Mental Health Commission that gives, online tips on how to combat mental health during COVID. And different study destinations like Study Gold Coast actually sponsored grocery packs and frozen meals to international students. So I would encourage you to follow our hashtag, in Instagram, on Facebook, go to our Study in Australia website to jump on the bandwagon.
Great, super. And we actually have the same one. IDP's got the same hashtag. If you can look at my In This Together. we are in this together. Ben, would you like to comment?
Yeah, absolutely. So what do we have in New Zealand? We launched, or the government launched a Unite Against COVID-19. Essentially, it was a social media campaign, but more of a physical program to help stop the spread of COVID-19. So obviously with the hashtag Unite Against COVID-19. So it saw huge, public support, and it really, played quite a significant role in raising the, public awareness of COVID-19 and what, the New Zealand population, obviously including all international visitors in the country at the time, could do to keep our community safe. There was a huge number of online resources to share that information, and what it basically meant or did is it helped keep our New Zealand community socially connected, despite obviously the physical isolation during the lockdown. And I think now looking back, I'm sure it'll probably be a case study in a few years' time, looking back at COVID-19, that it was so effective. Like I mentioned earlier, now with very, very close to having eliminated COVID-19 in New Zealand with no new cases in the past fortnight. Still a long way to go, but I think something special about New Zealand, as I've probably said a few times, as a country of just 5 million people, including all of our visitors who are made to feel as part of our New Zealand family. It was almost a challenge that was accepted, and our New Zealand Prime Minister, who's a pretty powerful leader of our country. She was communicating, doing daily press conferences to our country. There was clear communications, and so I think it was a hugely effective campaign. We also probably tapped into the In This Together hashtag as well, and it basically let us draw attention to conversations and issues of student well-being, support, some really genuine acts of kindness that were going on in the international education sector during such a challenging time. So that was a good way of us to, we've seen some amazing videos, we've seen some incredible acts within the international student community, some pretty cool lockdown stories of young students from around the world at homestay families on farms in New Zealand, and it's been pretty inspiring to see.
That's inspiring. That's encouraging. Thank you. Caroline, I know Canada's got a great one, but I won't embarrass myself with trying to speak French, so I'll let you go.
Well, we're bilingual, so we got a French and an English one. But yeah, we joined the Rainbow of Hope campaign. So this is a global campaign. I don't think it was started in Canada, but then we developed our own hashtags and so on with Everything Will Be Okay. or in French, ça va bien aller, which is the literate translation of everything will be okay. And it was really to kind of spread some hope and cheer those working on the front lines. And it really took on social media, using the hashtag for so many different things, beautiful stories, but also a lot of kids or people were drawing rainbows a little bit everywhere with the hashtag. So many cities in Canada literally had like houses, while, you know, we're all in lockdown, staying indoors. Everybody was drawing the rainbows across their windows, shops. So it's been really nice. I mean, it went beyond social media as well with the rainbow, which was beautiful. So that's what we've been doing.
That's so cute. That's so powerful, actually. That's so nice. Not just a hashtag, but also symbols. Okay, thank you all our panelists. I think now that we've seen some questions coming through the Q&A function, we'll just like to answer some of these. I'm just a little bit conscious of time. So everybody here attending, do note that we also have our counselors moderating this chat as well. So feel free to ask any university or application related questions, and our counselors will assist you with it directly. So I think the first question that we have, let's start with one that is directed to Helen. Since Cambridge is allowing UK students to resit their final exams, you know, A-levels and IB in autumn and enter in 2021, will it affect international entry for the 2021 intake?
Very good question. So I'm going to be very boring and refer back to what I said earlier. If you do have specific questions about your intended university, please do get in touch with the admissions team there. This question specifically about qualifications, I understand, is a real concern for students. So you'll probably have heard that in the UK, as this attendee has mentioned, those students who, you know, because the exams for schools aren't going ahead this summer in the UK, and so the replacement then, so that people can go forth into university or into work, is that they will get grades based on their performance throughout their A-level time. And the other option is that they are able to resit in the autumn, as mentioned. What I would say to these students who aren't able to do that, if they're international students, is what I said before about get in touch with your awarding body, with the organisation that organises your exam, because they'll be able to give you more information. And then what you do with that information, take it from them and get in touch with your admissions team at Cambridge or other universities to see what their plans are and how they're going to make flexibilities or what their plans really are. The other thing I can advise is for you all to go on the UCAS website, UCAS. That's the the portal where you apply for undergraduate studies in the UK. They have a fantastic page on there. In fact, if you just Google UCAS coronavirus, they've got a fantastic page specifically for international student concerns. And on that page, it will show you all of the main examining awarding bodies. It will tell you what their plans are. If your body isn't, your awarding body isn't there, go and get in touch. What I would also add on to the back of this is, if students have questions about, what are my options this year compared to next year? Should I defer? All these sorts of questions. A couple of tips. I think one thing is, if you're going for a highly selective university such as Cambridge this year, it's difficult to say, but you might find yourself perhaps in a smaller pool than you would next September. But obviously, again, we don't have a crystal ball, so you'd need to check in with the admissions team there to see how things are going for them. For September 2021, if any of you are looking ahead to there, difficult to predict, but some things I would say for those considering, should I defer, should I not? The UK is seeing a growth in 18-year-olds, so it may be that we have more applicants in 2021. And some students, of course, are going to choose to defer. That's natural, and that's totally you know, in their rights to do. And so you may see there's a peak next year. But any of these admissions questions, get in touch with the admissions team at Cambridge or the other universities.
That's a super advice. Does anybody want to add on to the question? If not, I'll ask the next one. Yeah. Okay. We've got a number of visa-related questions. Sharifa, perhaps we could ask you this one. With the online learning and face-to-face delivery, will there be an impact on post-study work visas?
So at the moment, there's no impact on the post-study work visa because the Australian government recognized that, you know, this is it's an unprecedented issue. COVID-19 is something that has taken globally by storm. So students, as long as you are an Australian student, you have the visa later on, you study in Australia and partly study online, the post-study work rights will not be affected. There are no plans at the moment, but I would encourage you to continue to look at the Department of Visa, Department of Home Affairs, that has all the visa regulations. So, you know, you keep yourself updated by that while looking at the website. So
if the students were to then do that duration online, does that count towards their post-study
yes, so
criteria?
So the Australian government, we don't penalize students for studying online because we know that it's not by choice because of COVID-19. So, you know, as long as, let's say, the first semester, you study online, and then once Australia reopen the borders, then you go and travel to Australia to continue the rest of your education, you are still entitled to your post-study work rights at this moment. But, you know, like I said, you know, the Department of Home Affairs might change some of the regulations, so keep yourself posted, from that website. So look at our Study in Australia website. We are helping students to aggregate all the data to make sure that you have the latest info.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sharifa. Ben, would you like to comment on this as well? You know,
the post-study work visas?
Yeah, are there any impact to post-study work visas and the criteria? Yeah, especially if, you know, the duration is online. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, for post-study work visas in New Zealand, that does require 30 weeks minimum study in New Zealand. So I think at the moment, Immigration New Zealand's considering options to, considering options around the minimum study duration. But unfortunately, we don't have any further information from Immigration New Zealand at the moment. But we probably expect some further clarification in the coming weeks. But right now, as I said, the current requirements apply. So that is 30 weeks minimum of study physically in New Zealand. That's for qualifications at level 7 and above on our qualifications framework, or 60 weeks of study for qualifications at levels 4 to 6. So, but look, if you do want any, that's sort of the top line detail, but please do visit the Immigration New Zealand website. We are expecting some more updates around those minimum requirements pretty shortly.
Great, thank you, Ben. Caroline, I know you've already commented on it. It's confirmed that all the online durations that the student does count towards their post-study work visa. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
I guess you can visit the IRCC website, the Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada website. That's where all the details are posted. But currently, as I said previously, students who are not able to travel to Canada at the moment can start doing their online learning from Singapore or their home country. And they can complete up to 50% of that program online if they can't travel to Canada sooner. But the time spent online, at least till the end of this year, 2020, will not affect the post-graduation work permit, at least the length of the work permit after graduation. Then again, if online study was to continue beyond 2020, we don't know if there will be an impact or not.
Got it. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you for reiterating that. Helen, do you want to comment on this one?
Yes, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So the UK government is absolutely committed to introducing the new internationally, recently coming out into the papers, the new graduate immigration route for international students. And this will begin from the summer of 2021. So next summer. So any of you who are graduating next summer will be eligible for this. And it's available to international students who have a valid Tier 4 visa, so the normal Tier 4 student visa at the time of application, and who have completed a degree at undergraduate level or above, with a proven track record of compliance. This does include students who have already started their courses. So for example, if you're a Singaporean student who is in their second or third year, then as long as you're graduating next summer or after that, then you're eligible as well. And it includes people who have needed to undertake some of their studies overseas or remotely because of coronavirus. Because as Sharifa said, it's, that's not their problem at all, and that's not their fault. So it won't affect their application. And successful applicants on this route will be able to stay and work or look for work in the UK for 2 years upon graduation. And once you've found a job within that time, then you can switch on to the skilled work visa route and stay longer then after that as well. So this is really good news.
Super, that is really, really good news. Thank you, Helen. So we just have another question. So this is for all the panelists. Do you foresee universities relaxing the admissions criteria for those taking A-levels this year and applying for the 2021 intake? Yes. Helen, would you like to kick us off again?
Sure. So I suppose what I'd say on this is all UK universities want to maintain their standards and their entry requirements. So it's as flexible as they want to be and as supportive of students they want to be. Students will need to be able to successfully complete the course, and so entry requirements will reflect this. So I wouldn't foresee grades going down a lot, but again, contact the admissions team. They may be making slight allowances.
Cool. Sharifa, would you like to comment?
Yeah, so my advice would be the same as Helen, really. I think the entry requirements will remain. I think quality is something that Australian universities take very seriously. But what the universities are doing is providing more scholarship options for Singaporean students and ASEAN students. So I think it's more of maintaining the quality, but also making sure that they are helping students financially to make sure that students are able to pursue higher education.
Ben, would you like to comment?
Yeah, very similar to what Sharifa and Helen have mentioned. I mean, probably relaxing entry requirements is probably the wrong word. I think it's probably definitely more flexible. But we've seen already a couple of direct inquiries to Otago University into their medical school or first year health science for students sitting A-levels. I think look, all of our 8 universities are very realistic around the different circumstances around the world, and A-levels or cancellations of other national school exams or whatever it might be. So I think admissions teams are your first port of call, along with our friends at IDP. If you've got any questions around entry requirements, we've got a whole host of people who can help you out. So please do contact them directly for those entry requirements.
Thank you so much, Ben. Caroline, do you have anything to say?
Yeah. Similarly, for Canadian universities, I doubt that they would be necessarily relaxing the entry requirement. Obviously, they are still going to maintain the same standard and their reputation is also very important, and they still want to attract the best students that they can. However, I do think that a lot of international students, may have different circumstances and so on due to the pandemic. So I do think that there's definitely a willingness to work with those students and look at those special circumstances more than before, but I doubt that they will relax the entry requirement. And if you do pursue an education in Canada, it's still going to be of high quality.
Yes. Yep, indeed, quality is the take-home message. Thank you so much,
Yes.
everybody. Thank you all. And okay, so I don't think we've got, if there are no other questions, I don't think we've got any more. I just want to thank everyone again for attending the event and contributing to such a great discussion. Thank you all for your questions. Everyone with fantastic questions. And thank you again, panelists, for taking the time to provide so much clarity for all of us in attendance. Really appreciate it. For the rest of us who are in attendance, if you have any more inquiries that we didn't get to cover today, or you would just like to get in contact for more advice, we've left some details on the screen for you with some great resources you can use. There's our link to our virtual counseling services, so you can be connected to our counselors to help you through any questions relating to overseas education. And of course, those admissions updates, as our panelists were talking about. You can also connect with our universities virtually from our website under our Meet the Expert section. We host lots of webinars conducted directly by our universities. You can also stay connected with us on Instagram and Facebook to receive updates on more webinars and talks like this one. And with that, thank you all again, and stay safe, everyone. We hope this has been a really useful session for you, and we hope to hear from everyone again soon. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.